Welcome to the Telltale Cake, where we tell tales with cake. And we talk about tales, and we try to ignore the corpse that is under the floorboards. I'm your host, Beth. With me today is my dear friend, Ginny. Ginny is probably the only person who has a degree in comparative literature from Purdue University.
The first, not the only, but I am the first. At this point, I'm no longer the only. I'm the only one with a double degree in Spanish and comparative literature, as far as I know.
This all makes me nervous because it means you actually know things about literature.
Or I pretend to. I have a piece of paper that tells me I do.
I don't even have a piece of paper. I just read books and sound judgy about them. She also makes soap and earrings. Both of us are wearing earrings that she made. I don't know
if they'll show.
Yours show up a lot better than mine. But they're very pretty earrings.
Hobby. It's fun.
She also raises money for Armenian orphans because she's just kind of a good person.
Most of the time.
So, Ginny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
What are we reading and why are we reading it?
Well, we are reading the first book in the Cairo trilogy by Naguib Mahfouz. And Naguib Mahfouz is one of my favorite authors. And actually, I had not read or heard of him when I got my degree. None of his works had been translated into English. However, with the Cairo trilogy, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. And after that, his works were translated. And now they're read all over the world. So this book, or the Cairo trilogy, was published in 1956. I can't remember the year I read it, but it was not translated until the 90s. So it was much after he wrote it that it was translated and available to those of us who don't speak Arabic or read Arabic, and I don't.
I don't either. How did you find out about Naguib Mahfouz?
I think I was trying to find something interesting to read, and sometimes when I want to find a book to read, I just scan who's won a Nobel Prize, and I pick an author, and then I investigate their body of work. So Naguib Mahfouz came up on that list, and I just fell in love with his works in general. I started with the Cairo trilogy, which we're going to talk about in detail with Palace Walk, the first. Naguib Mahfouz himself was born in 1911, and he passed away in 2004. So he was an old man by the time he died. He was very prolific. I think he is one of the most prolific authors I have ever read. He wrote for 70 years. 70 years of his life were spent writing. He himself was very educated. He had a degree in philosophy. He studied ancient Egyptian history. And some of his work is short stories about ancient history or short novels about ancient Egyptian history. He wrote the Cairo trilogy. He wrote big novels. He wrote plays. He wrote short stories. He wrote short novels. He wrote some of everything. Very versatile. And there are many writers who write just plays, or they write novels, or they write short stories. But Naguib Mahfouz did it all. And, you could say an author has a style or a message, and if you've read one book, you've read them all. Not so with Naguib Mahfouz. The only thing you could say that's a common theme is it's all Egyptian, and he loved Cairo. So most of his work is actually based in Cairo. He loved Cairo.
Now, I actually had never heard of Naguib Mahfouz until I met you. And in fact, mostly when we went to Cairo together, and you were very excited about.
I was very excited about walking along the places that Naguib Mahfouz walked along. We walked along Palace Walk. I don't know if you know the exact spot, but we walked right along there.
And you also got to visit El Fishawi Cafe, where he did a lot of his writing. And
yes.
I'm hoping you'll let me include that wonderful picture we have of
Oh,
you
sure.
sitting.
Reading Naguib Mahfouz, of course.
Yeah, it was just, that is actually why I was interested in reading Naguib Mahfouz, because you were so excited about him and being able to visit those scenes when we went to Cairo.
Yeah. I think we need to mention also why he is contemporary at this moment, in a way. I mean, he has passed away, almost 20 years ago. But he wrote a book called The Sons of Gebawale. I think you read that one too.
I borrowed your copy and read it, yeah.
He actually got into some trouble for that. There was a fatwa put out against him. He was accused of being, a heretic. And that's, I think, arguable, but that's something maybe we'll get into a little later. But they actually did try to kill him. There was an attempt on his life, and somebody slashed his throat in some corner in Cairo. He survived. And then Salman Rushdie came out with his satanic verses, and as we know, very recently, somebody did again. They tried to kill him, and got further than they did with Naguib Mahfouz. But when they first put out the fatwa against him, the comment that was made was, if we had done away with Naguib Mahfouz when he put out his book, Salman Rushdie never would have dared to come out with the satanic verses.
Interesting.
So, yeah, he was his earning of the Nobel Prize puts Arabic literature on the world stage. It's the first Arabic work that ever did get a Nobel Prize, and it allowed it then to be translated so it's available to all of us. Unfortunately, I can't read it in Arabic. I wish that I could.
Though a fun fact that I found out is that the translation was actually overseen by Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't it?
Right. She was apparently really involved with the Doubleday Publishing House in some way.
She was actually she was very intelligent and competent and capable. That's not what we hear about her, but...
Yeah, we mostly hear about her ability to wear hats.
Yeah.
Which
she
excellent.
did well.
We should not underestimate her ability to wear hats, but she also did a lot with publishing books, apparently, including this one. On this channel, we eat cake with our books. Today, we're eating baklava, which is not so much because it's specifically Egyptian or specific...
It's not Egyptian at all.
Yeah, it's really not Egyptian. We're mostly eating it because you can actually make baklava by hand, and that impresses me considerably.
And you asked me to... You specifically wanted it, so...
I love baklava.
It's very sweet. It's very good.
I have attempted to make baklava, and it's really difficult because you have to work really fast, and you have to keep your phyllo pastry at a certain amount of dampness, and I failed at both of those things, and then I just had really cracked and broken, messy baklava. And it wasn't sticky enough. So let's eat our baklava.
Okay, let's have a snack.
And fortunately, you remembered to bring napkins because baklava
it's
is sticky. And you make your baklava with pistachios and walnuts.
Yes,
correct.
I make it with both. Yeah.
Now, I believe baklava, the nut mixture tends to vary by country a little bit. Like, the Greeks do it a little bit differently from, the Palestinians.
Does it pass?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm a little bit too much lemon juice in the syrup, but not bad.
I like lemon. So in my world, you can probably not have too much lemon, but it is very lemony.
And very buttery and very sweet.
Mm-hmm. It's a good baklava.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy making it. It's a challenge.
And we're having coffee because the characters in this book have a family coffee hour every day. And I realized we mostly drink coffee on this show. But this time there's a really specific reason for it. And I'm sure Kamal would love baklava.
I'm sure he would.
So let's judge this book by its cover.
All right.
So we have a picture of a street in Cairo. I'm not mad at it, but it's kind of boring.
What, the street?
Just the picture.
Oh, it seems to me it could have, well...
It could pop more.
It could. I mean, as we know, Cairo is very colorful. It's loud.
It's busy.
It's busy. And that picture does not really depict what Cairo is like. Cairo is vibrant.
Yeah, this picture kind of makes Cairo look a little boring, and it makes the book look a little boring, and I'm just not a fan of it.
No.
It's very sepia.
Yeah.
Very brown.
Probably because it's supposed to be about the past.
Well, the past was not brown. Well, it was pretty brown in the 80s. But there was still color in the past, just because we didn't see it on TV. Or in photos so much. All right, so let's get into this.
Okay.
We're going to meet a family that lives in Cairo in 1917.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the patriarch, the head of the family, is Al-Said Ahmed Abdel Jawad. I don't speak Arabic. I don't pronounce Arabic well. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. So when we say that he's Al-Said, this is a title that is given to descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. So when it's granted to people, it's kind of an indication that they are extra special holy. And yes, it's more complicated than that. But when Mahfouz is telling us this man is Al-Said, he really wants to make a special point of how holy this guy is supposed to be. And this man, he's very conservative about his family. Like, he does not want any of the women to leave the house ever. He doesn't want any fun. He hires this old guy to recite the Quran outside his shop every day. And, however, every night, this guy is going out and partying.
A bit of a double standard. I guess I don't know if he is supposed to show that he is more holy. My interpretation of it is he represents an older model. He represents something traditional, and he actually lives in two worlds. He completely separates his life at home and his life carousing with his buddies. There's complete double standard. He can't really maintain that firm tradition that he is supposed to represent. But he does in his own house. Outside of his house, he's a totally different character.
He really is.
And do we like him?
I don't.
We do not like him.
I don't like him at all.
He's very severe. He's mean.
He's very mean.
He's mean and extremely controlling.
Yes. When we talk about his wife, Amina, now, she's actually the person we meet first. Her entire world is this house that she lives inside. Her husband does not want her to even visit her mother without him going along and in a closed carriage. So she is very sheltered. She's very secluded. We find out that she thinks that the Queen of England is still Victoria.
She's not educated at all.
She's really not. She makes bread, she orders the household, she prides herself on how submissive and how sweet and gentle she is and how she's the perfect wife.
And she is a very sweet person.
She is.
And she's not unintelligent. Her father allowed her more freedoms, so she does have some knowledge, but it was very limited and curtailed when she got married.
Yes.
But we do like her, I think.
Although
sometimes we want to just shake her and say, stand up to him, but we know what would happen if she did because he can become violent.
Yeah.
I think it is very telling that Naguib Mahfouz chose to represent her first. He doesn't start the book with a man. He starts it from a female perspective. And I think of respectful and sensitive representation.
He does a really good job being respectful of Amina, I think. And even though I do want to tell her, you deserve more than this, even though you don't think you do. And she's very sympathetic.
She is, yeah.
We just want her to have the best.
We do, and I think that's Mahfouz's objective, is to show us this traditional, severe, supposedly holy attitude and how it isn't really fair and it doesn't really work, which is why he was criticized by some of the more conservatives. But he actually demonstrates very, very nicely how it just doesn't work. And at that time in Cairo, at the end of World War I, it was starting to fall apart. That old traditional model. They were living in the modern world, the European world, and the old Egyptian world at the same time.
And we should probably mention that this is a period of time when Egypt is a protectorate of Britain. And while Egypt did not really have a lot of participation in World War I, a lot of foreign troops were stationed in Cairo.
Occupation.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people throughout the book talk about the Australian troops and how much they dislike them. Because
they were rude. They were mean and disrespectful to the Egyptians.
Yes, and if there's one thing a populace really does not like, it's occupying foreign troops. Yeah. Populaces just really dislike that.
Yeah.
And for a lot of good reasons.
Absolutely.
We'll get to that. Amina and Abdel Jawad have 2 daughters. They have Aisha and Khadija. Now, Aisha is described as being just this perfect beauty. She's blonde-haired, she's blue-eyed, she spends a lot of time singing and looking at herself in the mirror. And also, the scandal, she stares out the window at this handsome policeman who walks by every day. So she hangs out so he can look at her. And this is rather scandalous. But it's very cute.
It is cute. Nobody knows that this is going on. Except, I guess, her sister Khadija figures it out. But her father never figures this out.
Never.
That would be dangerous.
Exactly. Her father would probably do some violence if he found out that she was doing this. Oh, speaking of Khadija, we also have Khadija. She's the older sister. And she is not described as a beauty. They talk a lot about how thin she is.
Aisha's thin. Khadija's plump. Aisha's too thin. That's her only defect, is that she's too thin.
Yes. Yeah, Khadija's defect is that she has too large a nose.
And a biting tongue.
Yes. I relate to both of those issues.
She was not too thin.
Khadija actually figures out that Aisha is having this forbidden romance, because this counts as romance in this kind of situation. But she doesn't tell anyone. She just sort of is nasty about it. She's kind of nasty to everyone, but she's also deeply worried because she's not known as a beauty, and she's scared that Aisha is going to get married and she won't be able to get married.
Because that is the objective, is to get married, have a family, and that is, I would be jumping ahead, but for these women, for the virtuous women, that is the objective, that is the goal, and that's pretty much all there is to hope for.
It's also the only way to get out of their father's house.
Right, yes.
It's a very circumscribed life.
Yep.
And this is the only possible objective.
And if you know nothing else, it's hard to even dream of doing something else. There are women in this story who do have other goals, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Very soon, actually. Let's talk about some of their sons.
Okay.
Start with Yassine.
Okay.
Yassine has a job, so he gets to leave the house and be a man, kind of. He's a secretary at a school, I believe. So he's got a good, nice paying job. He is not Amina's son. He is from a former marriage, which causes him a great deal of grief and pain because his mother keeps getting divorced and remarrying because his mother can do things like that. And apparently this upsets him, somehow reflects on him. I'm not totally sure what's going on. I think culturally it's not the best thing, but it's also not that bad culturally to divorce.
No, she owns property.
Yes.
She is somewhat independent. I wouldn't say she is a happy person because she had bad luck. When her first husband was not nice to her, she divorced him because he would not let her out of the house. And even though our main character is that strict and that conservative, there are women older than he is who had less supervision, let's say, who had more freedom. So he is an anomaly even in his current time.
Yes, he is much more conservative than the culture, actually.
And his first wife objected to this and tried to visit her family. He became violent. I think he actually kicked her out and threatened divorce. And basically her family said, okay, that's the way you want it, unless you promise never to hit her and let her go out, do things when she needs to go out and visit. She's not coming back. He was surprised, but too prideful to agree to civil terms like don't beat your wife, and he let her divorce him, basically.
Mm-hmm. And now Yassine considers this to be shameful for him that he's got a mother who is independent and divorces and remarries. And there's also this thing that is going on, like if she gets remarried and has more children or just has a husband, will he get her stuff when she dies?
Will he get the inheritance? That's a big thing for him. He is another one that I guess we would say we just don't like him. There are not very many, and there's nothing about him that we can like. And he's described as an ox. Even his father calls him an ox. He's a brute.
He is. He is also trying to imitate his father in having like a strict home life and going out and carousing in the evenings. But he does both things extremely worse than his father, if that's even possible.
Yeah. He doesn't have the class his father has. He's just a plain brute.
We don't like Yassine.
No, he's not a likable. He's a pathetic person. He's pathetic.
Then we have Fahmy. Fahmy is a younger son of Amina and Abdel Jawad. And Fahmy is a law student. And he's a very idealistic kid. He's very up to date in politics. He's very upset about the whole political situation in Egypt. And he is also a romantic. He's been staring at their neighbor Miriam through the window and is very much in love.
The hyacinth beans and the jasmine.
Yes, they have this lovely balcony with hyacinth beans and jasmine. And I would just like to hang out on that balcony.
On the roof. Well, let's talk just for a moment about rooftops in Cairo, because they're a very busy place. There's a lot that goes on there. And they had pigeons, I believe. Amina had pigeons. And as we learned when we were there, that is an industry that women have, and it is their industry, their money, and their entrepreneurial venture. And in this house and in this family, we see kind of a typical setup that way. There's a lot going on up on that roof. There's a little garden. There are pretty flowers. Amina takes great pride in caring for their chickens up there, too. She takes great pride in keeping that rooftop active and productive and pretty.
Yes. I ate a pigeon in Cairo.
I recall.
It was delicious.
I didn't. I should have had one, but I didn't.
They're good. You should eat pigeons.
I'm sure they're good. I'm sure they are.
So if you go to Cairo, which I highly recommend, eat some pigeons. They're great.
Yeah, you see them. You see flocks flying around.
And on people's rooftops, you'll see the pigeon coats, I think the word is.
Yeah, it's it's fascinating. But again, Cairo's a vibrant, busy place, and the picture there doesn't do it justice.
It doesn't show how much is going on those rooftops.
All right.
So that's Fahmy. And we have Kamal, who is the baby of the family. And Kamal is so young that at parties he gets to hang out with the women if he wants to. So he's kind of this little kid that gets to see both the men's world and the women's world. And he makes friends with everybody. Everybody likes this kid. He just wants to hang out and have a good time and eat sweets.
And he's very loving.
He is.
He's non-judgmental, and he is a very sweet person. He is supposed to be, I actually kind of agree with this, he is Naguib Mahfouz. Naguib was about that age when the end of World War II happened, or World War I happened, and he saw the things that Kamal sees. So he is, where the whole book, in a sense, is kind of narrated through his eyes as that small child, Kamal. And he's very objective. He doesn't judge the women. He doesn't understand why things should be the way they are for them. He sees the men's side too, but he doesn't understand why they do some of the things they do. He sees the world very purely. And he's also very pious.
He is.
He's very pious, and he loves to study the Quran, and he loves to recite the Quran, and he wants to understand what it means. He teaches it to his mother. He talks about it with his mother and his brothers. Naguib Mahfouz himself claimed to be a very pious Muslim, although, the conservative side said he was not, because he was a little bit more objective, I think, and a little more gentle at heart. But to him, he believed that was being the pure Muslim and not the strict, severe extremist mode. But I may be interjecting some of my own opinions. But Kamal, I think, does represent Naguib Mahfouz himself.
I would agree with that.
And we like him.
We do.
He's just the sweetest little guy with no prejudice at all. He is able to make friends of the soldiers, the English soldiers, when they make their encampment out in front of his house. And there's some question whether or not those soldiers were really respectful of him, or whether they saw him as a caricature, basically. And we aren't sure. There might have been one who actually liked him, or were they just, I don't know.
Playing with him?
Playing with him, yeah. So, yeah, there's that question. I guess Mahfouz lets us ask that question.
I think we can read it either way.
Yeah, but there's a question there. Although he was very good with them. He was very able to like them and see the good in some of their behavior, even though they were encamped right in front of his house. They gave him chocolate. They listened to him sing, and he was a very good little singer.
Finally, we have Hanafi, and she is Amina's maid. So she's kind of the family servant. She feeds everyone really well. She wants both Khadija and Aisha to be super fat because that's,
Attractive.
Yeah.
That's attractive.
Yes. This is before it became attractive to be super thin. So she's just kind of your nice servant. She hangs out. Everyone likes her. She will be important later. Okay, so we met the family. And the first thing we learn about this guy we don't like, Abdel Jawad, is that he's going to make sure he ruins everyone's marriage hopes. Now, I've read a lot of more Renaissance and medieval literature, like Boccaccio, Beaumarchais. So when I read stories where people are staring at each other out windows and sort of sighing from afar, I expect everything to work out, because I've been primed for that. This is like exactly the plot of Barbara of Seville. And half the stories in the Decameron. But so I'm expecting a very cute romance for Aisha and for Fahmy and a happy ending. It's not going to happen. So the police officer who's been staring at Aisha manages to talk to, I believe it's Fahmy, and send in a marriage proposal via Fahmy. And Abdul Jawad is just angry. How would anyone have ever heard of Aisha or know what she looks like?
Did he see her? Did he see her?
Yeah, that's...
He's kind of obsessed. Nobody has seen my daughters.
Exactly. He's obsessed. He's like just absolutely
severe, very severe.
So that's the end of that. Fahmy, he's a man, so he can talk to his mother directly and say, hey, I want to marry our neighbor Miriam. Now, I know I'm still in school, but maybe we can make the engagement, wait till I graduate, get a job. So Amina brings that to Abdul Jawad, and he's like, absolutely not. He's just so angry that it's not his idea, basically. He's like, just no, absolutely not. And that's the end of that.
And everybody accepts it because they have no choice, basically.
But then we have a very nice day for the family because Abdul Jawad is out of town on a business trip. He's going to, I think, Port Said. And he's not going to be back for a day or two. Now, something comes up that's very interesting and very true to life to me, which is that in this household, everyone's very used to lying. And that's what happens in a very authoritarian household situation. Lying becomes something you do. This is, I think, actually the American Association of Pediatricians, has a report on this where they talk about how corporal punishment in children tends to lead to children who are less honest and more violent because they want to avoid punishment and they don't have good problem-solving skills and that don't involve violence because they haven't seen that modeled. And we see that here. That
everybody, survival. To survive, yes. They all learn to lie. And
exactly.
They all accept that that's how we have to do.
So anyway, as soon as Abdul Jawad is outside, they start convincing Amina that she should take a holiday and leave the house, which she's hasn't
done.
Yeah, and go to the shrine of her favorite saint and pray. And this is such a sweet, innocent thing to do, and just such a conservative Muslim-approved activity, really. You go to...
And, yeah, even her father would have approved and did let her go out to do things like that. I mean, not a lot of activity, but that was accepted, even in the older generation. But, yes, her husband does not allow her to even step 1 foot out of the house.
All her kids think it's a great idea, and
they love her.
Yeah.
She's a very nice woman. And they all love her. They want her to be happy.
And we as readers are like, yes, go out and pray at the shrine. Have a good day. Just have a really nice day. We want that for her. So she goes out to pray at the shrine. It's great. Kamal goes with her to show her the way and the way back. Kamal is super excited at being out, so he's taking the long way. She gets tired and confused and ends up being hit by a car, which... in 1917 is not really that big a deal. Cars don't go that fast. It's still not great. She breaks a collarbone.
Yeah, poor thing.
Yes, poor thing. So they have to call the doctor, and then she has to be on bed rest. So basically, Abdul Jawad is going to come back and find out something happened. All her kids are like, just say you fell down the stairs.
Yeah, everybody's practiced the story. They're all ready to go along with that to protect their mother.
Now, their mother, however, is too sweet to lie. So she ends up, spilling the beans.
Which does not go well for her.
So as soon as she gets healed up, she gets kicked out of the house, out of her house that she takes care of, and has really never left. And so she gets kicked out of the house, and she goes to stay with her mother.
Who's a blind old woman who lives on her own.
Because women do that, again.
And women are allowed to do that. That is still part of the culture. And she had been invited to live in the house with Amina, but she refused because she did not want to give up her independence.
Who would, really?
She would rather live alone, blind, than live in his house. It's kind of telling.
Relatable, though.
Yes.
I would make the same choice.
Yes, exactly.
So she goes and, that happens for a while until one day Abdul Jawad just changes his mind and calls her back.
She gets to come back.
He just continues going out and carousing and has no more indication of tenderness or anything.
Let's talk about his carousing.
Yes.
Because there is a totally different person that we meet. You would not know they were the same man.
Exactly.
He's handsome.
He tells jokes.
He tells a lot of jokes carefully, never to hurt anybody else's feelings. Very careful that way when he tells his jokes. He's an excellent musician. He sings. He has a great voice, very musical, and the life of the party, just the life of the party. And he does have a series of lovers on the side that he selects, entertainers, women who are independent, which is interesting. That's who he has his most fun with, is these women who have chosen to be entertainers, musicians.
Who are not well respected in the culture.
Not well respected, but
it's a thing you can do.
It's a thing you can do, and they are happy.
They are.
They control their destiny. They have their own money. They have their own decisions. They have their own houses. Mm-hmm. They pick their lovers and don't have to be married to them. Mm-hmm. And they're in control. They're in charge of their lives. I think it's really interesting that that's who he's happy with. That's who he's comfortable with when he won't allow that of his own wife. It's an odd way of being, but I thoroughly enjoyed. I think, because I've read this book twice, I don't think I noticed in the first round. I was much younger. I don't think I noticed how much happier the entertaining women, even though they may not be respected by society as much, they're happier. They're in charge. They're independent.
They are.
And they actually enjoy their relationships. Now they're married men usually who they're having their relationships with, but they enjoy life.
They do. And while we're on the subject of men getting with entertainers, Yassine, who is trying to follow in his father's footsteps, is also having an affair.
But he doesn't know that yet.
Yes.
He doesn't know. It's a secret.
He is seriously lusting after this young entertainer. And
Zanuba. Is it Zanuba, I believe?
Yes, Zanuba. And he manages to have like a meeting with her and a tryst in the same evening in the same house as his father is getting with another entertainer. And it's extremely funny.
It's very funny. It's very funny.
Awkward. Mm-hmm. But that's how Yassine finds out about his father.
Yeah. I think it's Naguib Mahfouz, the way he describes the women and the way the men look at the women is, I wish I could read it in Arabic, because I know we're missing so much when we're reading a translation, but it's so hilarious, really, the way he talks about their bottoms, their full flesh over the edge of the chair, fully filling the chair, and how the men are imagining just how that flesh is falling over the edge of the chairs.
Yassine spends a lot of time looking at women's bottoms.
And yeah, it's just hilarious the way he describes that. You just have to kind of laugh at it.
So that's going on. And then Aisha ends up getting married. Specifically, she gets married to the son of this old friend of the family's, who manages to convince Abdel Jawad it's okay for Aisha to get married before Khadija. So they go off and have a marriage. And Abdel Jawad, it's not in his house, but he's still somewhat upset about all the marriage festivities. Like, he just doesn't think it should be celebrated with joy. He thinks everyone should be quiet and somber.
With his own family, he's sort of, although he's the party animal.
Exactly. So his daughter's getting married. He wants to just kind of sit around and be gloomy.
Well, and he also wants to, he can't break through. He can't show his fun side. And besides that, there might be an entertainer there, and he really doesn't want to be seen in the presence of an entertainer. And I guess we should back up and explain that it is very common in a wedding for entertainers to be brought in to sing and to dance, even though they're not respected by society on some levels. They're always at the wedding.
Right.
They're always performing at a wedding. And he can't mix his two worlds, so he doesn't want to be seen at the reception where there might be an entertainer singing.
Especially one that he might have been sleeping with, which is the case and is kind of a problem because people start making jokes about it, and Yassine gets drunk and starts sort of making snide remarks about this because he knows. And these jokes sort of get back to Amina. And there's a passage that I found really interesting that I'd like to actually read. Amina suddenly became angry and felt for a few seconds she was about to lose control of herself. She quickly suppressed her anger with all the force of a woman who did not acknowledge that she had a right to get angry.
Oh,
I know. Oh, Amina, you deserve so much better. You have a right to be angry about the way you're treated.
Absolutely.
Get a divorce. Come hang out with us.
We'll take care of you.
You can go pray at all the shrines you want to.
Yeah. And remember, we wouldn't know that if Naguib Mahfouz didn't make sure that's how he presented it. We wouldn't have the feelings we have for her, that empathy, if he didn't make it so clear. Because we just want to take Saeed and we just want to put him in a corner and, I wouldn't want to be violent because that was his thing and it's ugly, but I would like to just lock him up and let everybody else have some fun.
Exactly. And I actually really resonate with Amina because I grew up in, a more conservative Christian environment where that was sort of women don't get angry. Women are sweet and gentle. And no, women have a right to get angry, especially with men in this situation, because really, come on.
Well, the message there is become an entertainer and you have control of your destiny. Or get a divorce if you have inherited property and you can be in control of your own destiny.
So either be single and an entertainer or be divorced and have property.
Yeah.
We got that covered. I'd like to give a content warning here because we're about to start talking about some sexual assault. If you want to skip it, here is a timestamp of when we stop. So, wedding. They all get back from the wedding. Yassine is very drunk, very excited, thinking about how he wants to follow in his father's footsteps and get all the stuff his father does. And in the courtyard, because it's kind of hot, Hanafi is sleeping.
And remind that she is the servant who's lived with the family forever.
Yes.
And she is probably Amina's age or older.
And she has been with the family for years. So Yassine has known her for years. But in his drunken, entitled state, Yassine sees her as
an opportunity.
That is probably the best way to express that. And he tries to rape her. And she wakes up and starts yelling.
She protests. She screams.
And Abdel Jawad comes downstairs and gets really mad. Yassine runs to his room. A few people have been watching through the windows, see this happen, including Amina and I believe Fahmy. And don't say anything because this is not a household where anyone knows how to handle conflict resolution.
Right.
Just not at all. So this horrible thing happens and nobody addresses it. Abdel Jawad's solution is that Yassine is going to get married. Cool.
Yeah, poor woman that will be saddled with that beast. Yeah, it's tragic because the victim never gets any justice.
Never.
It's just quietly never talked about again.
In fact, Abdel Jawad thinks about firing her and asks Amina about her morals, and Amina has to protest that it's not her fault.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It's pretty revolting. But we should also mention that he himself, Saeed, the father, has never been that kind of a brute. When he's had his lovers, he has always courted them, and they have selected him. He's not a rapist.
Exactly.
And he does not respect or condone rape at all. I mean, he's very harsh with his son about it. Of course, he's harsh with everybody about everything, so it's kind of hard to distinguish his behavior about this incident as opposed to any incident or innocent incident. But he is not that. He's pretty bad, but he's not that.
Yassine is a special kind of horrible person.
He's pretty easy to despise.
He is. So he gets married. So his new wife, Zainab, enters the household. And Zainab is a much more progressive woman, and she's from a very progressive family. She's the daughter of a good friend of Abdel Jawad's from his double carousing life.
All right.
And so
thank you. I'm drinking a lot of coffee.
Well, the demi-tasse cups are about this big. So keep drinking. It's in the early in the morning. So as she comes in, she has her maid with her, and she and Yassine, they go out to the movies together because that's a thing that she's been accustomed to do with her father. She doesn't see why she can't go to the movies with her husband. So they go out to see Kish Kish Bey, which is a very popular, it's sometimes referred to as the Charlie Chaplin of Egypt, but it's the super popular, humorous, comedies that are being produced at the time. I am trying really hard to find footage.
That would be great. I'd love to see that.
They go to the movies. And this angers some of the other members of the household who don't get to go to the movies. So Abdel Jawad finds out. And he gets really mad. And he just forbids Zainab from leaving the movies and yells at Yassine. I feel like he yells at Yassine about this more than he does about raping Hanafi.
Yeah, pretty much.
So there's that tension going on. And then in the midst of this, Khadija gets married. She actually gets married to the brother of Aisha's husband, who has seen her when they're over visiting, which they have to kind of lie to Abdel
About
Jawad.
that, yeah, because that would be a sin. But they're actually an interesting family. They're old money aristocrats, and they are much more progressive. And those two men, the brothers, the husbands, they're nice men. They're not very ambitious. They smoke, and I don't know if they tell us. I don't think it's just tobacco. I think there's some hashish and some opium going on there too.
As much as they lie around smoking.
And play the lute, and they aren't extremely ambitious, but they're
nice.
Nice people. They're kind, they're thoughtful, and they are gentle and respectful of their wives. So they're very likable, I think. It's Ibrahim and Khalil.
That sounds right.
Yeah. They're nice guys. And their mother is actually not so bad. She's a widow and also progressive. she is the only one who can put Saeed in his place.
Yes.
And she's not afraid to do it.
Which is amazing. So, Khadija gets married. Yasin's pretty drunk again. So Yasin decides to go and assault Zainab's maid. And this upsets everyone.
Noor.
This upsets everyone even more. And it's
worse. It's worse than the first assault.
And
the poor woman. She doesn't fight because she doesn't think she has the right to fight.
And everyone gets super racist about it because the maid is black.
Nubian, probably.
Yes.
South Sub-Saharan, but yeah, it's very ugly, and she has no voice.
Yeah, everybody's very upset with Yasin for not just assaulting a maid, but assaulting a black maid. It's very uncomfortable. It's horrible.
It's a difficult, very difficult chapter to read, actually, when you see just how much unfairness there is. Because she ends up just having to pack her bags and leave. And we don't know where she goes or what happens, but she has no recourse. Hopefully she has family. We don't know. But she is in the night with a little bundle of her belongings. She's sent out. And that's the end. That's all we know of her. And it's extremely sad to see that. And even Zainab doesn't have sympathy for her.
Zainab, she's just thinking about herself, and she actually leaves. She goes back to her father and gets a divorce.
Yeah, which is good, but poor Noor, she really...
Zainab has a father that she can go to, and he'll take her side. Noor, we don't know anything about.
No, it's horrible.
It's awful, and... Noor is also darker skinned and
less,
which, it all still means less than in Egypt, in many places. So
it's, but again, let's just point out, we only know and feel this because Naguib Mahfouz made it very clear just how unfair and how awful it is.
Yes. Okay, revolution time. So it did start in 1917, and we're getting up to 1919. Now, quick history. I learned this largely from reading Wikipedia because Egyptian history in this time period is not something I ever learned about or ever knew.
Or most of us haven't heard. It's not something that was taught in our schools.
It was not taught in mine.
Even with misinformation, like we got some of the other history, we didn't get any of it for Egyptian.
I don't know if that's better or worse than misinformation. Probably better.
Maybe.
So anyway, like I said earlier, Egypt was not really that involved in World War I. There was a German Zeppelin that flew over Egypt rather famously and back again, but it did not, as far as I know, bomb anything. There were troops stationed in Egypt, which, again, is going to make the populace unhappy. And as far as I can tell, what happened is that Egypt was declared a protectorate of Britain, which has sort of already been taking it over from the Ottoman Empire. And the understanding of the Egyptians seemed to have been that the protectorate was only to be in effect through the end of the war. But
and
the
that
British...
it was declared illegally, or at least in the book, that's how we are learning that it was declared illegally without the consent of the Egyptians.
Which is probably
true.
It is the British.
The imperialists.
Yes. Yeah. So the British do not have the same understanding that the protectorate is going to end. As far as they are concerned, they just have Egypt now. Because Egypt has, at this point, the Suez Canal is built at this point, I believe. Yes, so they have the Suez Canal, which is super valuable. And the British don't like giving things back when they take it. I'm still upset about not being able to get to London because of the pandemic, because I really wanted to see all the stuff from Egypt that we couldn't see in Egypt because it's in the
They
British
took
Museum.
it. They stole it, basically.
Yeah.
And
there's that
they're still fighting over it in international court. Give us our stuff back. They haven't gotten their stuff back yet.
I assume they will. It will take a
It'll
while,
take
if it ever. So, yeah, Britain doesn't want to give Egypt back. They have an Egypt. It's a nice Egypt. They like it. So there are a group of Egyptian revolutionaries that write a very nice letter to the British telling them to get out.
Get the heck out, basically. But in a very nice way. It's a very,
It sounds so polite. Anyway, these revolutionaries get jailed or exiled by the British, and this sparks huge demonstrations throughout Cairo. And this is when it really starts affecting our family. Fahmy sort of stops going to school and starts
the students are on strike.
Yes.
That's a
thing students do. Good for them. So Fahmy goes out and demonstrates and strikes with the students. Kamal, he sort of gets swept up in one strike, but he's so young. I think he's still in primary school.
Yeah, he's a little guy.
He largely gets forced to go to school and escorted around by his family. But while Fahmy is out demonstrating, Kamal makes friends with the soldiers, kind of, because in response to the demonstrations, a lot of soldiers show up. And there's this one encampment pretty much right
in front of their door.
Yeah, just out on Palace Walk, just right in front of their door. And Kamal goes and hangs out with them. And it causes the family great consternation, but he won't stop and they're not hurting him.
No, they give him chocolate and he sings and he tries to learn some of their songs. They try to learn some of his songs. And again, we're not quite sure. We know Kamal is respectful of them. It is a little unclear. There's a big question mark as to whether that is reciprocated or whether he's just a little plaything.
Nonetheless, it is interesting to point out that Fahmy is all out anti-British demonstrating while his little brother's at home liking them, because whether or not the British are respectful of him, which I tend to doubt personally, Kamal genuinely likes them.
Yeah, especially Julian.
Yeah, they're his friends.
He's a little guy. And objective. He's pure.
And even with that, even though the British right outside their doorstep are generally respectful, there's this huge scandal because the boys see some of the British soldiers looking at Miriam, their next door neighbor, Fahmy's crush.
Yeah.
And that she is visible to these soldiers is this...
Smiling back, letting them see her.
Yeah, this is hugely terrible. Traditionally, in most situations, women, looking at occupying forces is just seen as this hugely awful thing. They're taking our women is usually the way it's phrased. And all the terribleness of that attitude. So they basically stop talking to Miriam, who's been their friend since childhood.
Yeah, that's sad too. And poor Miriam is alone. Her father dies. He's been paralyzed for years, finally dies. And unbeknownst to her, her mother is having an affair with Saeed.
Yeah.
He's sneaking over to her house. Yeah.
But her being seen by people is it cannot be borne.
Yeah.
So they kind of stop being friends with Miriam.
Poor Miriam.
The demonstrations continue, and it gets really close to home when some of the demonstrators dig a big trench to hamper the foreign forces from driving around. And the British respond by basically kidnapping a large number of citizens and forcing them to fill in the hole. And Al-Said gets
He gets
caught up in that.
Caught up with that.
So he does a night of forced labor.
Not happy about it. Nobody's, and it's it's older men they force to do this.
Because that's who's out late at night.
Right. Carousing.
Yeah. And this is actually the one time I feel sympathy for him being out carousing. The fact that he's a terrible person does not mean he should be forced into labor by an occupying
They don't
force.
know. They just took old guys and forced them to work.
And speaking of working, the revolution, it works. The revolutionaries who sent the very nice letter get released. There's and talk of ending the protectorate. So it's like, yay, we've won. So the students are going to have this victory celebration. Fami goes and participates. And there's a couple of stray bullets, and Fami is shot and killed. And the family is informed both that he's been shot and killed and that they can't have his body, that his body belongs to the people. There's going to be this huge, demonstratory funeral. And that seems horrible to me, that they can't have his body.
Well, yeah, I guess we don't ever see Amina's reaction.
True. Which I feel like we only see Al-Sayed Abdul Jawad being upset about it, but we never see what his mother thinks, and which is just so sad.
Yeah. And that's how the book closes.
Mm-hmm. It should be this huge celebratory thing, but then this huge
There are
tragedy.
two sides to the revolution and even the victory. And that's book 1. There are 2 more.
Yep. So let's talk about rating this book. I use a sugar system here. So the sugar sexiness is the S. I think this book is kind of the opposite of sexy. I am going to read in its entirety one of Yassine's sex scenes with Zanuba, and this is consensual. But
It's, yeah.
he remembered Zanuba. He saw her in front of the mirror, smoothing her hair with her fingers. The armhole of her dress revealed smooth, clear skin sloping down to a breast like a round loaf of unbaked bread. Intoxicating desire swept through his body, and he fell on her like a bull elephant crushing a gazelle. Maybe that sounds better in Arabic.
I'm sure that, well, I mean, the bread thing, I think there's something we're missing. But basically, Yassim is portrayed as a brute. Mm-hmm. And there's not much, I mean, we do see he does have a heart. We do see that at the end of the book when his mother dies. But other than that, that man has no feeling for other people. He's just a brute. That's all. An ox. They call him, his father calls him an ox. And maybe that's why he's a brute. Maybe he was called an ox since he was, he was with his mother when he was very little. Mm-hmm. And that was actually his happiest time of life. He loved her. He had fun. She was warm with him, and then it all changed. And he went to live with his father when he was of age, and I believe she got married or divorced again, but she did have several marriages. But yeah, he's just not the kind of guy you want to go out on a date with.
No. He's a bull elephant.
Yeah.
Also, breasts as unbaked lumps of bread, just not sexy. Not sexy at all. Well, in my opinion. Do any of you find it sexy? Let us know in the comments. So in Sugar, we've got uniqueness. Now, I have never read another book about an Egyptian family in the early part of the 20th century. This is fairly unique. It's the really the first time that as you were saying, an Egyptian writer has won the Nobel Prize. It's the first widely read Egyptian work, I believe.
Yep. I would give it many stars, many sugar stars for uniqueness. Sexiness, well,
It's the opposite of sexy.
the only women who are able, well, Zanuba, I mean, we don't really know, but it seems that the entertainers are allowed to enjoy sex, but we don't ever have a scene where he tells us much about what goes on there.
Gender is the G in sugar. This book definitely passes the Bechdel test. So there's a lot of women, they have names, they talk to each other about things other than men. And for being written by a man, there's a lot of respect for women and a lot of insight about how women don't have as large a scope in this society and what options they have. And also, you know, how some of them...
A lot of, sensitivity to
Yes.
to the potential, and just demonstrating to be able to have what you want, you have to pretty much not have a husband.
That's the message. Don't get married. Now, Franz Kafka once said that a book should be an axe for the frozen sea inside us. So, how much do we think this is an axe for our frozen sea?
I think the older you get, the more of it there is.
That's a fair answer. I don't know that this changed me or shocked me or anything, but I did learn a lot. And it is a glimpse into a culture that is treated with a sensitivity that it would not be by a modern author.
When I read it as part of the whole body of work and the rest of the trilogy. And I think Mahfouz is masterful. I just wish I could read it in Arabic because I can see that I'm missing so much just because I'm limited to the English version of it. But I think he was extremely masterful. He brought a family to life and an era to life. I mean, we could see the streets of Cairo when we read this book, when we know those people. Not every writer can do that. He develops those characters so nicely.
And that does bring us to readability, which is the final letter. It was hard for me to get into this book, but once we met all the characters, I got really interested into what happened to them. I got very invested in this family, even though I quite disliked some of them.
Well, that's a good book. You can't like them all. And they were multidimensional. And even Yassine, the ox, the brute.
The bull elephant.
Yeah. There is a place where we actually kind of have to feel for him. He actually shows his heart a little bit. I'll have to reread the rest to remember all that happens. But what he's setting us up for is this tradition that the man of the house has set. It's not a sustainable model. It's not going to last. And we see that deteriorate in a number of ways. The birth of the first grandchild, we didn't really talk about that at all, but that's already a problem. Loss of a son to the revolution, all of his efforts to control what that kid didn't save his life. And there's more change to come because, Egypt will evolve and politics will change and go through their pendulums of conservatism and progressiveness.
I really want to read the next two books in this trilogy now, so
I have them both. I'll let you borrow.
I will take you up on that. And one thing I do want to mention more with readability is we are missing stuff culturally and linguistically. I know because Arabic's a beautiful language, and I know we're missing some things in the translation. And then there's some phrases that don't make a lot of sense, and some that only make sense to us because of some stuff we learned when we visited Egypt. Like, what's the phrase about being beaten with slippers?
With 1,000 slippers. Shall I find it in here? There are a couple of references to being beaten to death with slippers. Okay. This is actually Zanuba, I think, talking to Yasin when he gets married. And he's breaking up with her, and she's mad about it. You son of a bitch. You kept the news secret until you got what you wanted. The boat you're leaving on is better than the one coming here. You deserve to be beaten 1,000 times with a slipper, you bastard. So...
Now, one thing we learned is that there was a ruler of Egypt in the past who had a wife, who was quite a lovely lady. Well, sort of. Arguably. Anyway, he decided to marry a second wife, a younger model, and then he mysteriously ended up being beaten to death with a bathroom slipper. And what we're talking about with bathroom slippers are these Turkish-style bathroom clogs. So,
I just happen to have a pair of winter slippers.
I just happen to have a pair. They're large, they're wooden, they're heavy. They've got these inlaid mother of pearl, because why not?
They're decorative.
Yes. They're actually very hard to walk in. I know they're supposedly bathroom slippers, but I did try.
Well, if you're in a hammam or someplace where there's a lot of water, your feet won't touch the ground.
And you probably won't slip.
Right.
The one time I've tried wearing them, I was very nervous about falling off them because they're kind of narrow. My feet are kind of wide.
But you could do some serious damage with those heavy wooden slippers.
I could, in fact, beat someone to death with a pair of these.
1,000 strikes could easily do it.
Yes. So anyway, this ruler of Egypt gets mysteriously beaten to death with a pair of these shoes. And then the older wife ends up mysteriously beaten to death with another pair of shoes. Possibly the same pair of shoes.
Possibly.
Quite possibly. Rumor has it. By the younger wife. So after hearing this story, obviously, when I encountered a pair of these style of shoes in the market, I bought them. Because everyone needs a pair of shoes that they can beat a brute man to death with. Just,
If only Noor had had a pair of slippers.
Yeah, Noor needed a pair of slippers. So overall, what you have noted down is that this is a very timeless novel because it's about human emotions and family and oppression and rebellion, and that's still
recurring themes. Never ends.
Ginny, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I love to talk about Naguib Mahfouz.
Yes, you do. And thank you for making baklava, even though it's not Egyptian. I'm just always impressed by people who can make baklava. It's amazing.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Like and subscribe and whatever else I'm supposed to say. And we will see you next time.